very, yeah. All right, guys, we are here. We're live, and to be honest with you, I'm proud of myself for getting here because the kids were a little difficult tonight. But I'm so happy. Me and Tori had this plan for a little bit. I had to reschedule for a few different reasons, but we're here, and I'm so excited. How are you tonight, Tori?
I'm great. I've been really looking forward to this, so I'm glad we were able to reschedule.
Yes. So, oh my gosh, it's like I've had you on the show a couple times. The first one was you, Mike, Matt. Mike, Matt, and me. You, Matt, Mike, and me. And then the second one is you popped in for my celebration for the 1,000 subs.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you so much. And we kind of always just talked about what I knew about you first. I knew your channel before I knew that you were an author.
Mm-hmm.
And I, in fact, I knew about your channel, and I had talked with you for a very short amount of time before I knew that you actually wrote Phased. And it was such a cool thing because, not that, I mean, my idea with starting this channel was not just like that pursuit of knowledge to write, but I think it's a smart move to get people on your side, get people who are truly interested in what you talk about, how you are as a person, what you're interested in, and having those commonalities and building a little bit of friendships and stuff like that before doing that big thing called publishing a book. Because I mean, let's be honest, if you just drop a book without anybody knowing you're dropping a book, that's not smart.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
So I think that that's really cool. And you're doing a lot of what I hope to do one day. So we're going to talk a lot about the writing and stuff because that's really what I want to focus on.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you can avoid the mistakes.
Well, I think that's one of the things that just inevitably you go through that makes you a better writer, right?
100%.
I'm scared about that first book, or better yet, that first draft that just to me is like this big mountain. It's like, I want to summit that peak and stick my flag in it, and I will.
You will.
So if we could kind of start first with the second book you wrote, the Bloodstones, because, well, it's really good, and I want to kind of just hear that spiel, that view of your own book through you. So if you would kind of give the overview and the subgenre.
Sure. So The Bloodstones is my first epic fantasy novel. It is my 12th novel overall. It's dark epic fantasy. This is the story of essentially what happens is that 3 young boys watch an execution that they were never meant to see and get wrapped up in a succession war in their kingdom. On a larger scale, this book is kind of the origin story of the legends of the world that this takes place in, because I went back and I looked at characters from our own history like Achilles or Alexander the Great, and these just mythical war heroes. But where did they start? We always kind of deify them almost in history, and they become something beyond mortal, right? But originally they were kids. Where did they start? How did, what set them on that kind of a path, and how did that build them into the legends that they became? And so Legends of the Bruhi, which is the trilogy that this is in, is kind of setting up the legends for the world that I'm building here.
So sorry, I had to unmute my thing. Sometimes there's a random cry going on. So anybody who's familiar with my channel, you guys are used to the cry.
It's good. Right. It's all good.
So, that scene specifically, when they're watching that execution and it's talking about the blood, kind of feeling it was very visceral. I enjoyed that a lot. For sure. As soon as I started your book, I was like she knows, you have a really nice, acceptable prose. It's not like what I would say it's that perfect mix. So I like a book that challenges me, and I also like a book that I can just read and kind of digest either while I'm reading it or just given a little thought afterwards. Then there's other books like Christopher Rocchio, Malazan, that I've started like 10 times.
Yep.
You have to do a lot of, that's not how I felt. And I love that.
Yeah.
It's visceral, and it kind of, you know, through your youngest character, capture that human emotion in a very innocent way.
Yeah.
So highly recommend the novel. It's very good. I can't wait to do my recorded video review on it, because gosh, I just haven't had the time to do a lot of recorded videos. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's going to be fun. And again, I just found it so fun. Like I always tell people, when I read, there's like, when I feel there's this adventure coming, I get this feeling in my stomach, like, oh, here we go.
Let's go.
Yes, right. and that's when I'm getting fully compelled, really into it. And I felt that quite a few times. So that's incredible.
Thank you.
What were some of the inspirations behind that book in particular?
So Bloodstones is kind of my love letter to a lot of different characters and stories that have inspired me over my lifetime. It's literally, you know, I wanted my debut epic fantasy to be in essence a love letter to the genre and what I love so much about it. For this one specifically, there's so many different ones, honestly.
It's a hard question.
It is a partially Asian inspired world. It is not meant to be an Asian country in any way, but it is very heavily Asian inspired from a lot of my favorite stories. Like I grew up watching Rurouni Kenshin, who's the Wandering Samurai anime and manga story, and loved his character. I'm a big Korean drama fan. A lot of the old like kung fu martial arts films, and just the political tension that they always do so well. And it always feels like we're on the brink of something catastrophic. And it's like the setup of how do we get there, and how do we bring multiple countries into this massive war, and how does that start, and who are the people involved in the front lines of that. And I grew up on war stories. My grandfather is one of the world's leading experts on the Minnesota 1st Regiment in the Civil War. And and he grew up right after World War II. So, I mean, I just grew up listening to him tell war stories all the time. And it was always about the guys in the mud on the front lines, and their heroism and their courage and the fear and the horrible things that they faced. So it was just kind of like all of those things just kind of smushed in a blender, and me kind of paying homage to all of the amazing stories, both real and fictitious, that have inspired me throughout the years of writing.
So honestly, that kind of response is it's personal, because I have my grandfather. He was a military guy, and he told stories like that, and it was very cool to listen to the amount of depth that he would go into, and the passion that he had, like, while telling those stories. And also on the other side, it was like the raw emotion from a guy that you probably didn't see a lot of emotion any other time. You know, there were those soft spots for him, and usually it was his comrades, his brothers.
Absolutely. Yep.
So yeah, I can relate. It's really cool.
Well, and I mean, with the camaraderie in those kind of stories too. So I was an only child, and so I, you know, as a kid, I didn't have a ton of close friends, and I was always seeking that. I was always seeking that kind of the fellowship, you know. And so when I discovered, you know, books and storytelling, especially with fellowship style or brotherhood style stories, I really dug in and fell in love, because that was where I got a lot of that from.
So, you know, a series you and I have talked about a little bit was Mike Shackle's. Remind me of the series name.
The Last War.
Yeah, The Last War.
Yes.
So I haven't read the second and third book. I've only read We Are the Dead. but
So
I
good.
understand why you love that so much based on, it's through the way that you write. I really do. I get it. There's lots of aspects, definitely told differently, but appreciated by you in the same way and represented in a lovely way. That's so awesome. So I wanted to shout out some awesome people that are here. Shad Zaman, I hope that I'm saying that right, buddy.
Hi, Shad.
Knox, so lovely to see you. I haven't seen you in a little while, and I've been missing your comments. So I'm glad you're here. Tim McKay, my guy.
Hey, Tim. Tim's awesome.
Yes, he is. Up there in old Canada. Timothy Wolf. We thought we were. I'm glad that he actually said that. So the kids are getting a little bit older. We're able to get them in bed by 8 now. And let's just be honest, like the 9 o'clock was cool, for necessity. If I can do them at 8 p.m. now, that's much nicer. Yes. So expect more of the 8 and 8:30 guys. So Tim, thank you for bringing that up. My guy, Matt from Go Read Books. I have a story I haven't been able to tell you yet, Matt. So he bought a book off of Pango yesterday of mine. And I didn't notice. My wife was printing the shipping label. And she's like, do you know who bought this? And I'm like, no, I can look it up if you need. She's like, no, I can tell you. Like, that's Matt from, I was like, oh, that's so cool, man.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you, Matt. It's a doozy of a book, Children of Time. I'm telling
Adrian Tchaikovsky.
Yeah. It's pretty dense.
Sure.
It's good.
Yeah.
But it's not the type of book I'm going to be reading. I respect it. I respect what he does. I want to read his fantasy.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of that duology he has out. But it's like the city of
City of Last Chances.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And even he, like when I was talking to him, I did an interview with him, which man, it was a little stressful. My kids were supposed to be at the babysitter that day, and they weren't. They were a little crazy. But he's like, as far as my character work in my writing, he's like, that's what I would suggest you read because it's the best. So that's what he personally recommends. So I can't wait to dive into that. Kindles and Kicks. I love that name too. Like, just kind of comes off the tongue. Good evening, man. Charlie, all the way from Australia. He's into our tomorrow. I always like to joke with him because he's, ahead in time. And
he's in the future.
He is. He's straight up in the future. Daniel Klausler. Hello, man. And my wonderful moderator, the guy that kind of keeps me on my toes and keeps me inspired to write and be on time too, and kind of reminds me to say things during I don't have the most reliable short-term memory, so he does.
We need those people.
Yes. Samoki dude, my friend, how are you doing, Britton?
Hey, Britton.
All right, good deal. So I'm glad you all are here. It's so much fun I don't know about you, but before you come on live, isn't it just so inspiring to look over and just see how many people are excited to watch what you have to say?
I love my chats. I love them so much. They're cool. Awesome.
So I'm sure you guys all know this, but Tori had a wonderful guest last night, and I haven't seen it yet. Who was it, and how was it?
So I had the absolute pleasure of hosting Fonda Lee, the author of the Greenbone Saga, on my channel last night. And man, you guys, like, I walked away from that interview. I always love interviews. I love talking to people. It's why I do what I do. But I walked away from that interview feeling so inspired. I felt like I could sit down on my bed and write 3 books at once. Like I was so excited to dig back into my characters, and she was super nice and encouraging. And we did some really good deep dives into her writing process and her character work. And she's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant.
Oh my gosh. So, what kind of things, just real quick, if you don't mind, because I really enjoy these kind of interviews, and it's kind of what I try to replicate. Like, she goes into her writing style, you said?
Mm-hmm.
What she does?
Writing process. Yeah, we talked a lot about her focus on like the generational epic that is Greenbone Saga, and how sometimes characters need to make us uncomfortable in fiction, and that can help us kind of like actually think and engage with ourselves as people. And yeah, I mean, it was just a phenomenal chat.
So to leave that chat being you and just feel that way, that is incredible, because it's not everything. In fact, there's very little things, at least for me, that can really make me feel that way.
Yeah.
So that's incredible.
Yeah. I'm very inspired by creativity around me. So I always really appreciate being around very creative, excited people. And yeah, inputting that helps me get jazzed up for writing my own stuff.
I love that. And it's kind of contagious, right?
Oh, for sure.
Tim says Jade Legacy is one of the best books I've ever read.
I bawled in the ending, just flat out sat on my bed and cried. And I tagged Fonda on Twitter and said that I was sending her a bill for the Kleenexes that I went through.
What a better comment, right?
Oh, for sure.
Spark that kind of emotion in somebody as an author is just, that would be so incredibly rewarding.
Yep. She's amazing.
So I kind of asked you about your inspiration behind the Bloodstones particularly. We're going to go a little more broad with this one.
Yeah.
This might be my favorite question that I ask.
Yeah.
It's always different. It's always so fun. So when you found that passion for literature or reading, were you young? And so you were young.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. And then also some of those authors that really inspired you and gave you that passion.
So I definitely have inspirational authors. One of the things that I think is a little different for me is I often point to characters more than specific like series, or like I may love the series, but it was really like the character that was really what I latched onto. I've been building epic fantasy worlds since I was a tiny kid, and I had a playroom with the blocks and the Duplos, and I would build cities, and there would be pirate, invasions, and there was always like the monarchy and so I was always building big scale stories. And I loved doing that ever since I was a little kid. I started writing like super basic dog family stories when I was like 6 or 7, I think. And poetry, I started writing poetry when I was 8 or 9. I used to bring big brown bags full of books home from the library and have them all read in 2 weeks. And it was usually like the horse series because I was a horse nut. And I was kind of on this search. Like I could tell that there was something really deep and beautiful in storytelling, and I was kind of on a hunt for it. And Narnia was a big influence for me. The old BBC series I watched so many times when I was young. And I don't know. I think I was about 11 when I saw the first Lord of the Rings film. Ooh, yeah. And that just completely blew the doors open for what fantasy was to me. But I mean, honestly, a lot of my really early influences, I grew up Christian, and I was just enamored by these biblical heroes and these massive stories. And there's the idea of the supernatural and in these miraculous big things happening wasn't ever like foreign to me because of that. And so I think it just kind of naturally, I went from real history into the fictitious realm with fantasy slowly over time.
I have to say, having a very similar, I didn't fall in love with reading young, but what I did, and I didn't really even notice it until I actually thought about it, like the biblical stories that you're talking about, I grew up a very, very similar way, and found myself very inspired by a lot of them. And also there's stories where you're just like, wow, like, some things sometimes can be bad, like, and you have to be aware of that and how to deal with that in a good way. And so I'm glad you brought that up because that was very influential for me. Yeah. And I can tell you too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And I love to hear that. So I tell people that I was 29, which is true. That when I found reading, that's true.
Yeah.
And I thought that was my love for where and when my love for fantasy started. That's wrong. I did a little more digging. It was when the Lord of the Rings movies come out.
Yep.
everything that I think, because I haven't read the series, Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. I'm saving that for my oldest. Oh, really? Okay, good.
Yep.
Well, not good, but I can relate with it.
Yeah.
And I want that to be something that me and my sons experience together.
Yeah.
But I'm very excited because the movies, and I've heard majority of people who have read the books as well as watched the movies, like they're both wonderful, but the books are still better.
Sure.
So that's going to be fun. Yeah. But that's where my love for fantasy started, was Lord of the Rings movies.
Yeah.
And the fact that it could take me places that I had never been.
Right. Well, and I think, I mean, you and I are roughly around the same age. And I think for us, like the Lord of the Rings films were our generation's Star Wars, right? Yeah. Like that was the big, like sci-fi fantasy thing for our generation. And I think the relationships between the characters, not only was the world so inspiring, but just the fellowship, again, that tapped right into my love of Mly Crews and fellowship. And man, I am a Mly Crew junkie. I can't I love it so much.
So I hope that I don't sound halfway simple right now, but when you say Mly Crew, you're not speaking are you speaking of the band? Or like
kind of no, not the band, like I didn't even know that was a band until I joined Booktube, and then all of my wonderful rock and metal fans were like, yep.
Love and Mly Crew.
I love rock bands, but I had never heard of Mly Crew.
Well, then, will you tell me where your version of Mly Crew came from? Because I figured that was your answer, and I've always been curious.
Yeah, it was just the idea of this kind of band of misfits that kind of get thrown together by whatever situation they're in. And they, like in Lord of the Rings is a super easy example where, you have someone who's supposed to be a king, and also you have hobbits who have never come out of a hole in the ground, and you have Gimli who's I mean, there's just all of these completely different. I loved the idea of people from completely different backgrounds being brought together in a kind of tight-knit crew and having to work toward a similar purpose, especially when you have characters like Boromir and Aragorn, or Legolas and Gimli, who naturally are not friends, and they're kind of forced to. I think it's just a really interesting sociology experiment in a lot of ways, and Absolutely. You can really play with it. I mean, Mly Crews are a great playground for character building.
So, just in case anybody was wondering. My guy Yo, I knew that's what that meant. But there was such a big band, like I had to know, and I figured that it was when you look at the words together of Mly Crew, it makes sense, and I like how you bring that in because it's a lot, again, using that Lord of the Rings. I saw the Mly Crew that was put together. Very different from very different places with very different maybe foundations, if you will. I like the elves, like so proper, right? And you've got Gimli, who's just like sloshing mead down in his beard. It's just so I love those kind of aspects. But what I also got, not maybe for the first time, but maybe as intensely for the first time, was I remember when Sauron says, or one of the orcs says, we don't have enough fuel to keep making the steel. And he's like, we've got the wood. I don't remember the name of the forest. Yes, Fangorn Forest. And he's like, we have that at our as a neighbor. Burn it all down. Like no regard for anything other than his one goal.
Right. And that's why I think, for me at least, that's one of the things that makes such a compelling antagonist. And Fonda and I actually talked about antagonists last night, about the best antagonists are the hero of their own story. Ooh, right? If you completely flip the script and you write it from their perspective, like can you see where they become the hero? And it's and I always have been really intrigued by antagonists, and this is some of what I play with in Bloodstones too, who they believe so wholeheartedly that what they're doing is the right thing, that they're willing to sacrifice anything to get there because it's the right thing.
Yeah.
But it's from their very, who's giving them the power over everyone else to decide that their view is the right one. Well, they are. So yeah, it's fascinating. And like in terms of Lord of the Rings and Fangorn Forest and stuff, I think we can all remember, for those of us that have seen it, the Ents marching on Isengard is still one of the most incredibly emotionally driven scenes I've ever seen in a film. It's so good. It's so good.
You hit on a point that I deeply found disturbing in my mind. And I'll tell you, from a very young age, like I was philosophizing, okay, why is the United States, this was in terms of real life politics that I was thinking, because 9/11 happened. And I really was scared. I was 11 years old. I didn't know what was going on.
Same. Yep.
And I thought the world was ending, the rapture. I mean, I was very scared.
Yeah.
So I asked myself, and I never asked anybody else this, it was always this internal struggle. And I think why I'm bringing this up is I think it'll help a lot in character construction and building. We're right in the United States, but why are they wrong if they grew up hearing what they think is correct as well?
Right.
So drawing that line between right and wrong, I think for me depends on what you're doing, and if what you're doing is good or evil. I guess as a broad rule. I mean, I feel like killing people is just bad no matter where you're from.
Yes.
Torturing people or all that kind of terrible stuff is bad wherever you're from. It doesn't matter. So I think I used that. Yeah. I agree, Timothy. It brought me right back to that point for me when you said that.
It is, and it's hard. And I think why fantasy is such a brilliant arena for us to ask questions like that is because it gives us that psychic barrier, right? Because it's easier for us in a way to kind of set it at a distance in a world that isn't our world, to be able to explore and express things that are really hard to deal with. In Bloodstones, I went through a journey of working on expressing, there's a loss of self and identity in this story as a theme, and the idea of how long can you suppress the traumas that you've experienced before you start to come apart at the seams. And I mean, there's so many pieces like that are really heavy things that we deal with in life, that fantasy gives us that it's kind of like a little therapy session in every book.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I thought when I first started getting into reading and kind of analyzing things and themes and stuff like that a little deeper, not just for like kind of casual reading, but actually, I take some books and actually study them. I enjoy reading them, but I take points away.
Yeah.
That was one of the things, is like just that deep, really unanswerable question of right and wrong. And for me and for you, it's going to be a different answer. For somebody in France, it's going to be a different answer. So I don't think there's ever going to be a solid answer. I think that we can try to do our best as humans, and we all have a general sense of what that means, at least most of us, I hope. And if the closer we can all strive towards that goal, I think the better. And another thing I also didn't realize is, I'm a Christian as well. It's like, how as a Christian can I read and be so entranced and like into these fake stories with their own gods and stuff like that? Because when it comes to my booktube page or me reading, like I keep certain things like politics, most religion, all that stuff. Like you'll never get me to give you my opinion. I've had people try on my channel. It's like, brother, look, it's not happening, because the moment that I do,
it's not why I'm here.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
We are so much more than who we vote for, guys.
Amen.
And if you vote for the guy that I'm not voting for, like, I promise we can still be buddies. Like,
which is a dying art in our society, for sure, which is sad.
It's so divisive.
But I think, when I read fantasy, because I just go into the story because no matter what the religion of the world is or anything, and I've gotten into so many conversations about fantasy with other Christians, I can't even tell you.
Yeah.
But I go in and I say, okay, this character is struggling or having doubts about what they believe and trying to figure out how does that apply to the situation they're in. And I've been there, like, right. So I can relate to that, even though this is a fictitious religion and a fictitious world. Like, that never bothers me because I'm not there. I'm not reading a fantasy book for a conversion into a fake religion. Like, I'm just reading it for the characters, you know?
I think it was one of those fleeting thoughts for me. Like, I'll tell you who really kind of knocked it home for me was D.S. Amanti in Stone and Sky.
I have his on my TBR.
Dude, so much fun. That feeling I told you that I get when I know there's about to be an adventure, it lasts the whole book. I've told him this too. It's one of the funnest books I've read.
That's awesome.
And what's cool about it is he doesn't find it necessary to use curse words. He doesn't find it necessary to go into vivid description. There's violence, but you can probably read it as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, but you can also enjoy it as an 80-year-old. Right. I think he's hit that sweet spot as far as that goes. I really do. And I've told him multiple times, like, man, I think he's really got something special because he's got this way of telling a classic fantasy story in the modern way without the oohs and the uhs, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that because there's not a lot of that today. Now, don't get me wrong. I really enjoy a well-written, grim, dark
We Are the Dead
book. Yeah, exactly. It's when a book goes to places where, for like shock value,
the gratuity,
it's like when I put it up, can't do that. Like, like even if it's a fictitious world, and it's like there's things that just naturally, as a human, as a father and a husband, or of a daughter, and it's like there's certain things that I just won't read anymore. Just because it went there. Yeah, it went there for no reason. Now, if it aids to the story, I'll get through it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But it has to be earned. And that's one of the things that I really focus on in my books is every time I come across a scene that's going to be a heavy hitter, how do I earn this? How am I earning this through the entire story up until this point, not just the scene before, because that's one of my biggest pet peeves in reading is when I get to a scene where I'm like, that was completely pointless other than shock value, and it's really made me irritated now.
I think there's one that I can think of, and don't get me wrong, I like this author's prose, and there's other books that I really enjoyed. Book one, I think it's Mark Lawrence's Prince
of Thorns.
Yeah, Prince of Thorns. The beginning is quite dark. Now that didn't make me put it down, but it was a close representation of one that ended up not just being for shock value, but it's at the very beginning. Yeah. So there's nothing that's kind of leading up to make it worth what you're saying. Has it earned it? Right. So unless you're willing to kind of see if that happens, you're probably going to put it down. At least if you're like me or anybody else. So now I've seen a lot of your videos, but I have not seen the Clean Fantasy video. I did not know you did one on.
I did one because it seemed like, because Britton made the comment, I like darker stuff. I do too. For me, it's not the content, it's how it's written. Yeah. 100%. Like, I will read there. I've read books with all kinds of really, really dark content, and I've loved some of my favorite series are Malazan is very dark. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like, Fonda Lee's book has some really dark stuff in it. But it's how is it earned? Is it something that's just being thrown in there to shock me and be gross? Or is it something that really is trying to tell me something and be earned by the characters and the author? When I did the Clean Fantasy video, I don't write it, but I had noticed that a lot of people, I have a lot of friends who do, and I thought it was interesting. There's kind of this idea that clean fantasy is either for Christians or for kids.
or boring, and it's not.
Or boring. And it's like, I wanted to bring up the fact that, I mean, I named a whole bunch of books in that video that I was like, these are adult fantasy books that I consider cleaner books that still they pack a punch, and they're impactful, and they're really beautiful stories, and they're still dark in the sense that they handle a lot of heavy topics. It's just how they're handled, because there are a lot of readers who don't want to read all the trigger warnings in graphic detail, and that's okay. Like,
it is.
That's a good thing that we have this amazing variety of stories for where everybody's at.
Absolutely. So, if anybody's judging like somebody based on what they're reading as a human, we got to start over. We got to reconsider our priorities. So, but what I do, I just kind of lost it. Sometimes I do that because I'm getting old.
That's all right.
Oh, no, Tim McKay. So, dude, I hope this doesn't mess your reading up. A really good book. I'm just kind of walking through my emotions as I read it. But you're in a privileged spot. I'm going to tell you, it's earned. If you can get through it at the beginning, man, dude, keep going. If it's not something that's really bugging you, as a brand new dad to a daughter, it bugged me a little bit, but I got through it, and I enjoyed the book. I did. I don't know if I would reread it, or maybe I don't know if I'll continue the trilogy, but that's just me, dude. You could love it. In fact, I have a buddy that suggested Trials of Ashmount by John Palladino, which is very dark.
Very dark. Yep.
Yes, there's some points in that book that made me go, what? And it's turned out to be on my top 5 fantasy books of all time. Like, I absolutely loved it because it was worth it. The story was solid. The characters even better. Very privileged to have. I haven't read Buzzard's Bowl yet, but I can't wait.
I love the cover on that one.
Yeah, it's solid.
It's really cool.
I'm excited to get back to that series, and I know he's working on book 3. And I'm actually doing a little video since we're speaking on it. It's in the works as like why you should read.
I
think he deserves that, man. His writing is so good that I think it deserves that for sure. So be on the lookout in a little while for that. Probably a month, something like that. But yeah, so Tim, man, go dive in, brother. It's a great book. Just there's certain aspects for me that were, and then I'm definitely not the only one that thinks that, like
I DNF'd it.
I get that. Bookborn talks about how Zach Argyle, her husband, told her, like, look, you don't want to read this. Like, even from the very first page, you don't want to read it. And he knows her as a reader. So that's just my experience. Tim. So it's very much, this is also subjective, and it means nothing whether you like it or not like it. We just have personal preferences. We have personal morals, personal foundations. You just run with it. But man, that was such a good conversation on that. I love it. I can't wait to see that video.
Yeah, it was fun because I just got tired of people kind of, hacking on clean fantasy, because I was like, you know what? But you shouldn't. It's fun.
And I would be lying to you if I said I didn't have preconceived notions going into Stone and Sky.
Oh,
that it would be boring.
Yeah.
Or that it would be for kids. And that's the thing. Like, that's the consensus when you hear clean fantasy. No, like, there's descriptive violence to a sane amount. There's enough description to make you feel it. You know what's going on. You can see what the character's seeing.
Right.
But it doesn't go overboard to the point where you're getting so dark that it may be difficult for some people with those trigger warnings or issues will have to struggle through it.
Right.
So there's just kind of, before you go into a book that is considered clean, give it a chance.
Just read it for what it is. Don't expect it. Don't hold it. Like, I've gotten so much better at reading without comparison, where I just go into a book and I clean the slate ahead of time. And I'm just like, I want to let this book be in its own space because I don't want to have to expect it to be another story and that has changed the way I read books for the better, I think, because I'm just I'm like, I'm not expecting this book to be anything it isn't.
Yeah. Now, so I have to know personally, do you read blurbs a lot? Like, say you've heard a book's good or you're interested based on like what people have said about it, but you don't read the back, like you just kind of dive in, or are you like invested?
I do read the blurbs, especially when I am like purchasing books. But I have ADD. And so usually by the time I own the book, I forgot what the blurb said anyways. Yeah. So I typically go in fairly blind. I may remember some basic details about it, but usually there's enough time in between me purchasing the book and reading it that I've, kind of gone back to a bit of a blank slate.
I've found with the last few books, and I'll name those books. And I'm not done with any of them because you bring up ADD. I'm a very moody reader. So like it usually takes me a while to get through a book.
Yep.
Just because I usually pick another one up and then another one up. And
yep.
I'm actually getting better at that by making a schedule for myself because I found that if I do that too much, then I forget what's going on in the first book and then I have to start over. Definitely don't want to do that because now I feel like I don't want to read that book because I don't want to start over. Right. So I have to, that's for myself really. And also for, if I'm reading a book somebody wants me to review that I've agreed to, right. That's, me finding that process for me was key because, as a reviewer, there's lots of people who get a hold of you and want you to review their books. And you can't always say yes, or you would be piled up to your head in books.
Yep. Authors are very generous.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very refreshing and inspiring. They are. But you also don't, you don't want to accept 900 books and, because those cost money.
Right.
And accept those just for it to sit on your shelf and never get read or reviewed. So let's see. I've heard that. I've tried to dive into Blood Meridian, but it's written so, I hate to say wonky or just without any reason.
Yeah.
And the sentence structure, punctuation and all that. It's just like.
McCarthy is an acquired taste for sure.
That's what I've read like 4 or 5 pages of Blood Meridian and it was that quick. I was like, whoa, dude, like this for that reader that's very self-assured. They know they're quite confident in their ability to read some things that may be more difficult for a guy like me. So I was impressed when I got through Christopher Rocchio's Empire of Silence. It's very dense.
I haven't read that one yet, and I'm kind of low-key terrified. I'm not going to lie.
So it's for me, if I would have tried to read it fast, I would have never got into it.
Yeah, just taking your time.
Yes, enjoy it, kind of like digest it a little bit at a time. And it's wonderful. It's probably top 5 books of all time again for me. Was Empire of Silence. So I'm gonna look. I thought I seen a good comment. I probably am just crazy. I see things sometimes, guys. The eyesight's leaving me.
I mean, I think you're in good company here. We're all a little weird.
Exactly. I think that's the most refreshing thing. We're all human.
Oh. Well, I always tell everybody, like, I've waited my entire life to have friends that are as weird as me, and now I do. So
hell yes, absolutely.
I'm happy here.
It's like, hey, look, you know what? I feel better because, like, I'm not the only person that does this or thinks that way. So yes, it's funny, like us as humans, usually those things that we fear are just what we do.
Yeah,
it's usually the consensus, like, or if not the consensus, it's something that a lot of people also do that they're also scared to say that they do, or like, or enjoy. So that's very refreshing. So some Okie dude, you live for the blurbs. Okay. I think, I guess I don't have a great understanding of who there's more of, like the blurb lovers or the blurb kind of just ignore it and go into it. I think I'm in the middle at the moment.
The blurb will sell the book to me. After that, I don't care.
Yeah. Pure Nessie, based on Brian Bell's suggestion, I went into without any knowledge, and I'm so glad I did because that's one that is like, whoa, like I couldn't have imagined that before going into it anyway. Like it's such a cool book, so like incredibly smart she is, like or creative. What's her name? Susanna Clark.
Yes.
I think she's one of the only humans that her brain lets ideas go that far. But I'm absolutely loving it. It's super short. I need to finish it soon. I'm only halfway through it. Somewhere. It's super creative. It's very refreshing.
So are you guys talking about the back blurb, like the synopsis, or are you talking about the blurbs by other authors? Because I almost never pay attention to those.
Yeah, so like if it says Stephen King says this is remarkable, I'm like, whatever. He probably was paid to say that.
So I don't know if it was Bookborn recently who did a video on blurbs and how dumb they are. I think she did. Like she did some good ones and some not so good ones. But like, yeah, you buy a book and it's like remarkable. And you're like,
yeah,
great, like, that was worth the cover space.
That was vaguely positive, so I understand. So yeah. When I say blurb, and I know that that's describing both of those things. Yeah. What I always mean is that the back kind of saying, synopsis. John suddenly realizes his girlfriend isn't who she thought she was. She turns into a monster at midnight. And now what does he do? Let's find out. It's like that's what I'm saying. And a lot of the times I do read that, but I have also found it very rewarding to not. So I guess it's kind of just book by book basis for me, just how I'm feeling. Strange, yes. After starting Piranesi and really enjoying it, I have to read that. Strange and
that's a chunk.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because Piranesi is so small.
Oh, it's Strange and Norrell is a chunk.
Ooh.
Yep.
That is I just gotta. Caught my eye on something that I have to bring up since we're talking about books. Well, I mean, what else will we talk about, right? The Hanged God trilogy by
Tilda.
Tilda Holt. Yeah, Tilda Holt.
Holt.
I wasn't ready for the amount of amazing.
I can't wait to read those.
Oh, dude. Like, I have to say, the Broken Binding doing the special editions absolutely got me into wanting to buy her books, and how I'm still on the waiting list. If you're watching, Matt, you can put me. I just take my money, bro. I'm waiting. I'm excited. There's lots of people on the waiting list, but I've been on the waiting list for like 7 months. So I think
some people have been on it for years.
Yeah.
Yep.
Take my money, dog. Anyway, I bought the trilogy just because I'm so much in love with the first book, Northern Wrath. If you're into Norse at all, even just a little bit.
I am. It's been a while because I kind of go through different phases, and I've definitely been in an Asian inspired fantasy kick right now. But I know that at some point I'm going to be ready for some more Nordic fantasy. I'm very Norse in heritage, so I love a good Viking story.
My last name is Sorensen, and that is unequivocally, unquestionably Scandinavian. My ancestors went from Denmark. I have the records and everything and the pictures of them. And I actually look a lot like the guy. He had like a big ass beard and everything. Nice. He moved from Denmark to Michigan, and that's where my parents were born. So like they haven't moved. It was very easy to find my ancestry. But finding that kind of stuff out and wanting to read stories based on that is it's always so much fun. Yeah. I would say one thing, if you're into John Gwynne, which he's the reason I'm here, like other than Mike's book reviews, like if there's an author, it's John Gwynne. Like reading Shadow of the Gods, hands down got me into feeling passionate about books. Yeah. His have a sense of darkness as far as there's some violence. We've got some gods that are pretty mean. There's some pretty visceral descriptions of violence. Nothing crazy though.
No. He's kind of like what I tell people, like he's not, I would not recommend him as like clean fantasy, but he's kind of like one step outside of that for me. Yeah. Yeah.
He's definitely not like even close to the darkest. He's enjoyable.
Oh, for sure.
I think that's vague enough for anybody who's listening to understand. Again, it's not clean fantasy, but it's also not grimdark or hopeless and dreary and bleak.
It's a lot of good versus evil too.
Yeah. You've got a good dose of both.
Yeah.
Of hope and hopeless, good and bad. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. I like that. Yeah. Now the Hanged God trilogy, add about a quarter teaspoon more of dark. because there's some darker elements to it. But that's, I really love it. Yeah.
That actually sells it for me.
Yeah,
so
it does. And I didn't know that. I thought I was going to read like kind of a John Gwynne, retelling kind of deal, not retelling, but just inspired story. No, there's some really cool, after you die, Valhalla, trying to get there, kind of between worlds darkness that she inserts, and it's really good. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. The coolest thing is she did all this awesome research on like a Viking warship, and she's an interesting person. I hope to have her on soon.
Yeah.
So as a self-published author, what is one of those, well, actually, the way that I worded it when I was thinking of questions is, what was your toughest hurdle to overcome as a new writer? So like you're in the middle of writing Phased.
Phased is kind of my second, the start of kind of my second writing career in a way. I published when I was very young and wrote 9 books between the ages of 14 and 19. And traveled a lot, taught at a bunch of young writers conferences, adult writer conferences. I did. Yeah, I traveled a lot when I was in high school to different conventions and spoke about writing and getting kids inspired to write and all that kind of stuff.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it was a wild time. And then I went to college and got married and had children, and I took a break to be a wife and a mom, and Phased. Yeah, and in 2019 I was going through some stuff and wanted to write again, and that was kind of my dip the toes back into fiction as an adult. And I think one of the biggest hurdles jumping back in now is, first, everything has changed. Like when I was in the self-pub game in high school, it looked very different than it does now. And we didn't have the same kind of resources. And I mean, there's still a bit of a stereotype, stigma, whatever you want to call it, but not like it was then.
I'm sure.
And so in a lot of ways, I love that we just have this amazing community and the resources, and indie is really making a big name for itself, which is really cool. I think it was, honestly, if I'm being totally honest, one of the biggest hurdles I had to overcome was confidence. Because when I first joined the community, I had this career as a child author, and there's a part of you that always kind of believes that it's because you're a commodity, not because you're a good writer. You know what I mean? And I mean, and I had so many people that loved my books when I was young, and a lot of really big support, and it was an amazing time. But there's always that self-doubt in the back of your head, well, can I play in the big pond? And I really have to give a huge shout out to the community in general, and especially a lot of my close writer friends that kind of took me under their wing when I first joined the community back in 2022. Andrew Meredith is one of my closest friends. He's an incredible writer and just one of the most amazing cheerleaders on the planet. Thiago Abdallah, author of the Ashes of Averin series. Crystal Matar has been incredibly supportive, and just coming into the community. And I feel like they made it so easy for me to rebuild that confidence in myself as a writer. And that's something I'm really grateful for. And it gets me really emotional every time I talk about it, because I'm somebody that struggles with imposter syndrome a lot. And I was coming into Bloodstones. That was my big debut, right? This is the genre I've always wanted to write in. Can I be here? Can I carve out a space for myself? And the support from my friends and the community in general, I wouldn't be here without that. So I'm hugely grateful for that.
That is, oh my gosh, that hits that checks so many boxes for me. So this community, and again, I haven't written a book, so I haven't went to that length that you have. But to see how many people, or not just like how many people, but how influencing and passionate and willing to give their time and kindness. And I think one of the most important things in a human to be worthwhile to themselves first, and also other people to help, is to be considerate. And I've found so much of that.
Well, and I mean, when you come out with a book, you know, a lot of people when they first start, and I had the advantage of having been through a version of this before, so I have a little bit thicker skin than I would have had I just started here. But part of that is having, when you have to have confidence in yourself to survive as a creative person who is publishing and putting something very vulnerable from yourself out in front of the masses, where people who don't know you are going to be very brutally honest. And, you know, knowing that if somebody doesn't like your book, it doesn't mean that you suck. It doesn't mean that you should never write again. It doesn't mean, you know, not going off on this kind of spiral. You have to build that confidence in yourself and just keep going and say, you know what, I'm here to write, and I got to keep writing. I can't not. So
that is so core, guys. If you guys that are listening, like if you've never attempted to write, which is really the furthest I've gotten is attempted to write, it's a big undertaking, and our biggest like critic is absolutely always going to be ourselves. And to find that confidence, and to not only find it within yourself, which is huge, because that's usually the last step. You usually get it through other people first. You're going to get both, I feel like, in the community that I'm a part of. That, I mean, I know that we're part of both the same community, but the way that I see it, I feel that is a part of it. Absolutely. So last night I want to tell a story real quick based on what you just said, because I think it's incredibly important, and based very much so what you just said. I was talking to T.R. Napper, and he's written Neon Leviathan, 36 Streets. He's a cyberpunk author. He did humanitarian aid working in like Vietnam, got funding for like meals for, it's very poor part of this world. He's done some really important work. And he was speaking about one of his novels being so maliciously talked about. So it was one of his beta readers, or like maybe an agent he was trying to reach out to. And this agent was just like, basically, the fact that you think that this is worth anything, or that anybody would want to read it, makes me question your sanity. Like, super malicious. And he basically, what he did with that was, he loved his story. He was passionate about it. He has won huge awards on this book. And like so many. And one of which, in not just like a cyberpunk super specific niche, but fiction period. #1 fiction, like best novel for fiction period in Australia. So it just shows you that it's such a subjective thing to write, and for people to like it or not like it. If you're passionate about it, if you love it, if you're really wanting to continue, regardless of what anybody says, that's the one to put your time. I mean, at the end of the day, you're that person with that insight, the most insight.
So I think the two biggest factors to that are, if you're going to come in and you're going to be, you want to pursue publishing and being an author, you need that passion and that commitment and love for your own story. Love the story that you're telling, because you have to love it more than anybody else, right? And that's going to come through the pages to the people that read it, who will also love it. There won't always be those people will not always be the ones reading it. Sometimes you'll get a 1-star, 2-star, whatever. But the other thing is also being open to growth, because the other thing that I notice is that a lot of times authors like write their book and then they think, yep, I did it. And it's like, well, keep growing, keep learning, keep improving, like constantly better your craft, and be open to having the people you trust around you who can say, I mean, Thiago, when I was writing Bloodstones, I hit a wall in the middle of the book with one of the POVs, and I was really struggling. And he basically, very rightfully so, called me out and said that I wasn't I was not willing to take a risk, that I wasn't willing to do what I knew needed to happen for the story. And he was absolutely right. And the story is so much better because of it. Things fell into place as soon as I like let go and embraced what needed to happen. And you need that. You need trusted people in your life that are willing to help you grow continually in your writing.
Somebody who's invested as much as I know that, I've only spoke to him one time in our interview, and I could tell through that 1 hour how much of a genuine type person that guy is. Just like the most coolest guy ever.
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you find those type of people who you really feel are invested in seeing you succeed, it enables that ability or makes it easier to accept what you would call true constructive criticism.
Yes.
Because that never comes across as hate.
No.
Or bullying or anything like that. It's going to come across as kindness with suggestions.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably like what I was afraid to accept as myself. Like, I do not like to be criticized. And
no, I don't think anybody does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, as a person, I felt before really becoming a part of this community, I would probably get defensive and spew out some whatever, just being defensive. But growing as a person, you have to know that you aren't perfect, or I'm not perfect. And there's going to be people who has been through what I'm going through now who have something truly valuable to offer. And that's not going to come across as again, mean or hate. That's going to come across as constructive, but you can be kind.
Yep.
I think somebody that, I don't remember who said it on the channel. I was speaking to an author, and they put it to me, I guess the best way that I knew to accept what he was saying was, you don't have to be nice, because nice would be like, oh, it's okay, it's good.
Toxic positivity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Enabling your bull crap.
Right.
If they have something to say that's actually constructive, I think that's probably one of the most valuable relationships you can have with somebody.
100%. Yep.
Because it's not easy to be constructive or to criticize somebody's work, especially if you really love that person or are really good friends with that person, because you care about their feelings.
Right.
So it's going to come from that spot that's just perfect for getting better at what you're doing. So I like that you talked about that, especially your experience, because that's truly inspiring. So I personally draw inspiration through many different mediums, like, of course, books and specific authors' prose, or maybe maybe not even as big as their prose and specific, like the way that they may talk about their world, or maybe even just their cover art. Maybe it's their author or artists that I find that inspiration. But one that's huge for me is music. What are some of those inspirations, not books, but any other medium that you draw inspiration from for your writing?
Well, I mean, film and TV series are a really easy one. Music is probably my biggest inspiration, especially when I turn from wanting to input creativity through like books or film, and when I want to output creativity in my writing, I immediately go to music. Every book I write has a playlist. Most of my characters have theme songs. Most of, like, where there's a song where if I'm writing a certain POV and I'm having a hard time kind of getting into that headspace, I'll play that song and I listen to it every time, and that's the one that kind of pulls me in. Even just atmosphere. I listen to so many different genres of music, and a lot of, I'd say like 75% of the music I listen to is not in English.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I listen to a lot of different, global artists from a lot of different countries, and soundtrack obviously is a really easy one. But yeah, I used to, when I taught young writers conferences when I was in high school, one of the things I would always have the kids do as an experiment is we would try writing a little bit of a paragraph about a character they had designed in class. And then I would have them put that character into a situation. They're going to write a little bit about the character, and I would play 2 different songs with 2 different moods and have the kids write a little paragraph with each of those 2 different soundtrack pieces, completely different stories depending on what mood, so that music really is such a good catalyst for creativity. And it absolutely, I have my battle songs, I have my sad moment songs, I have my romantic songs, I have, all of that in the playlist so that I know I can grab whatever
That's
I
deep.
need. Yeah.
That's a lot deeper than I expected your answer to be. That's incredible.
I love music. I'm like a huge music nerd. So yeah.
For me, I think the biggest influence, like not just music, but the lyrics. Mm-hmm. I've talked about this on my channel before, but Breaking Benjamin.
Love Breaking Benjamin.
Oh, just that chef's kiss when it comes to not only just like those hard moments, but I'm telling you, this guy writes his own lyrics. Mm-hmm. And when I say that they're the most personal, intimate, not in a sexual way, not in a romantic way, but intimate as those feelings that we have inside of us.
Yeah. Yep.
Just if you are looking for that, my recommendation is absolutely not only Breaking Benjamin, but the Dear Agony album. There's so many points where I'm just like, I've never heard this kind of honesty. Like I didn't know that it was possible to be this naked emotionally.
Yeah. Yep.
So I find that is going to be something I use for characters, especially. Now, as far as like the adventure or maybe a battle scene, I always love to go on YouTube and like type in epic battle music. And what I found is the coolest little mash of music, like banjo in sci-fi mixture. I don't remember what they called it, but it's so awesome. There's just something about the banjo that goes along with like the synthesizer sci-fi kind of sound.
Yep.
It is so awesome. If you guys haven't checked it out, you should. So I'm glad you went into that because who are some of what are you? Are you a lyrics person? Are you, or is it kind of just depend on what you're after?
Yeah, I am definitely a lyrics person. I like depth. I also think music transcends language. And for me, that's a big part of it. And so, I can listen to a song in another language and I can understand the emotion that is being portrayed without knowing the lyrics, right? And yes. I love those because especially when you want to listen to somebody singing, but you don't want to be typing the lyrics into your story.
That's a great point.
It's listening to non-English music is really helpful for me because that way I can have that atmosphere in the voice without being worried that I'm going to kind of subconsciously start, dropping lyrics into my prose. But yeah, lyrics are big for me. Atmosphere in the story, the emotion that each song is trying to portray. I love battle music that also has some kind of haunting melody on top of it because that kind of, makes it a little bit more nuanced. I'm such a music nerd. It's crazy. For Bloodstones, I listened to, depended on the POV. For the more Asian-inspired nations, I listened to a lot of my favorite K-drama soundtracks. I listened to Ghost of Tsushima video game.
Yeah. So good. Such a good soundtrack.
Such a good soundtrack. Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice soundtrack. Some older, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, like a lot of the old, like martial arts films. And then for Sindri, who's my tribal horse warrior POV, she was more, I really delved into Nordic chants and that kind of tribal. Yep. So, and some of the, like the Vikings show soundtrack. I listened to some Mongolian artists because their culture is kind of a mashup. You love the Who.
Heck yeah.
yeah, it's just kind of a mashup of things, because I never want to draw from one culture specifically. I like to kind of have a mashup of different things so that it all kind of has its own flavor.
But I love that, because you really, I'm the same way. It's like, I'm not just a rock lover. I love some trap music that's really, really hard rap music. I love opera music. Andrea Bocelli is.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Just brings me goosebumps anytime. The dude, if you don't know who he is, he's a blind guy. And
brilliant singer.
Just, oh yeah. God absolutely touched his vocal cords and said, "You, sir, will do this." And just absolutely gives me goosebumps. And then I'll go to just heavy metal that's not so Christian. I like the music more than the lyrics, probably.
Right.
And then there's some really good Christian metal bands. Devil Wears Prada actually is a really good Christian band from where I'm from. They're from Dayton, Ohio. But hey, EC Greaves, my guy Ed, man, hey, Ed. All the way from New Zealand. I was going to do my really bad New Zealand accent, but I'll save you guys the suffering. Man, it don't matter when you drop in early, late, after we're done and you watch the replay. Man, you're a valuable guy. I always appreciate you. And Ryan, man, I could go on forever talking about Lost Souls. I don't know if you've read it, but I haven't yet. Oh, so good. It's very, very, for a debut, bro. It's like not even just that, for like as a darker sci-fi with like human themes, like there's a good father-son relationship that me and him talked a lot about when we had our interview. He was my longest interview ever. I think we went for like 2 hours and 15 minutes, which quite a long interview for me. It was great. So Tori, serious question. K-pop or J-pop, which is better? And by the way, I have no idea what either of these are.
So K-pop is Korean pop music, which is kind of misleading, because when you say K-pop, people get a very specific, stigmatized, stereotypical image of what that is in their head. And honestly, K-pop covers a lot of genres, so it's not just pop music. J-pop is Japanese, the Japanese version of that. I tend to listen to more K-pop groups. I am a big K-pop junkie, but not this, like a lot of people have a stereotype in their head when I say that. I promise you, that's not what I don't. That's not the bubblegum mini skirt K-pop.
I know what you're saying, even just by that.
Yeah. For J-pop, I recommend people listen to One OK Rock as a group. They are incredible. K-pop, oh man. I'm a big fan of 17, 80s. Oh gosh, a list. But I actually recently discovered a couple of Filipino groups, a rapper and a pop quote unquote group that are just incredible. So I've been really into Filipino pop lately. So yeah.
If you guys haven't done the put your feelers out as far as like where music can go, not just American music or British or the UK. Like it goes to a place that is so inspiring.
Yeah, there's so many amazing groups from so many different countries. I love it.
It's just like authors. Like there's so many wonderful authors out there. It's like an impossibility to get to them all and enjoy them all as they should be. And that's very much how I find music. So I find, speaking of which, Ryan, I hope that I know you're still here. That you're the last comment. Throw in the chat, if you would, brother, that band that you suggest. I was thinking about it last night. I wanted to listen to them. That band that you told me, you'll know who I'm talking about. Where they played from the end of their album to the beginning, and it meant something along those lines. It sounds really stupid and vague to everybody else, but he'll know what I'm saying. Pop that in the chat, man. I've been dying and I just could not think and remember. Britton wants to know if you like Pink Floyd.
I'm gonna say that Pink Floyd is a group that I know almost nothing about. Sorry.
So Pink Floyd has a couple.
I know of them, but
yeah. There it is, Parkway Drive. Nice. Britton, I'm not going to ignore your comment either. So Pink Floyd is one that I grew up listening to. but just enough to like know who they were and what they sounded like. Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall is about as far as I went. Like Money's a good one. You know, as far as like the album unheard singles that wasn't on the radio, like I'm very ignorant to. It's kind of like Tool for me. Tool, it's just 9 minutes of the same exact thing, and I get bored. I do. I need to hear some variances. I need the timing to go up, and so I respect it 100% because wow, have they changed the music scene? Yeah. Just like the Beatles. Not a huge fan of the Beatles, but I can respect it. Yeah. Amazing. I love that. So like I do, you draw inspirations from multiple different mediums. And I think that's important because it gives you gives me a sense of depth. Because there's things I'll get from music I'll never get from reading. Or
100%.
T.R. Napper and I was talking about how cyberpunk, which I've only read one cyberpunk novel, and that was his, Neon Leviathan, which is a short story collection. It's very visual. Yeah. I could point at a picture of what sci-fi or cyberpunk looked like to me, but I couldn't. I could now because I know his answer. But yesterday I couldn't have. Like, I couldn't tell you rule by rule or exactly what cyberpunk was as a rule. It's a very visual genre. And he put it the best way. It was high tech, low life. It's like, oh yeah, that's perfect. Like that's the best description. Looking forward to getting. I want to read his novel 36 Streets. I've heard so many wonderful things about it.
I need to clone myself so I can read more books.
I really feel you. Like, tell me, you have 3 kids, so I know you understand. It's like anytime I get that I was like, oh, I think maybe the baby's asleep, the kids are outside or at their grandpa's. I think I can get a chapter in. You start that first sentence, and just all hell breaks loose times 4 every day. It's just anytime. It's such a reminder of what I have in life. Yeah, and how blessed I am. Yeah. So it's definitely not me complaining, but it's also like a time where I'm like definitely not going to be able to read, which I love very much. Right. So it's a good time. What are you working on right now, and what's next for you?
Oh man. Well, I'm currently working on The Queen's Wolf, which is book 2 of Legends of the Bruhi. And I'm very excited about that.
I love that word, Bruhi.
Bruhi. Yeah. Oh. And in the Katashi language, this is me showing my author nerd glasses here, but Bru is the word for familial blood, and Hai is a covenant or oath. So basically, the name Bruhi literally means sworn by blood.
I love that.
Which was kind of originally the book was going to be called Bloodsworn, and then John Gwynne existed, and I was like, well, I'm not going to compete with that.
I think that was a smart move because instantly I knew what that led to me. So making your own voice is important. Yeah.
And it was something where I wanted to still have that concept, obviously, like the idea of being blood sworn to somebody in there, but I wanted to make it unique to. It was a good thing because it made me really dig further into my language and my world building for the book. Which was awesome. So that one's in the works right now. I'm about 7,000 words into that one. Starting to get in. I'm writing a Sindri chapter right now, which has been fun. Right. Other than that, I am currently also working on, I wrote a short story for the Advent of Winter anthology that came out in December. And that one, I'm so excited to get my hard copy. The short story I wrote was called Cold Silver for Souls, and the premise of it was a necromancer bounty hunter in a fantasy world inspired by the Yukon Gold Rush.
Ooh, yeah. You know what you want to talk about. Like, that's very defined.
that pitch I have down pat. I'm still working on Bloodstones because it's so hard to condense that into a couple of sentences.
It's an epic.
It is. It's so hard, you guys. Like, oh my goodness, trying to pitch your book is the hardest thing as an author you will ever do. It's way harder than writing the book.
If you've read a 900-page book, now imagine like thinking that out.
Yeah, and trying to explain that in like 3 sentences at the most. So I wrote the short story as I needed a break from while I was writing Bloodstones. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to just do something for kicks and giggles and try something completely different, and came up with Cold Silver. And as soon as I wrote it, I was like, ooh, I think I just found my first person narrative character that I've been waiting for forever. And so I'm turning that into, I'm kind of taking a chip off of the block of the old like 60s and 70s serialized Westerns.
Awesome.
So it's going to be kind of a shorter books, episodic, leading to kind of a big series climax. And I'm having a blast writing it.
That's good. That's the most important thing to hear, honestly. Just as somebody who loves what you're doing, just to know you're having fun doing it means a lot.
Well, and it's good because, you know, Queen's Wolf, the epics take a lot out of you as an author, because there's so many threads and there's so much to keep track of. And it's a really, not that Cold Silver isn't deep, because I'm dealing with a lot of themes of like grief and loss and holding on to anger, and because I can't just write a basic story. But the epic fantasies just take a lot out of you as a creative.
There's a reason they're epic.
Exactly. And the Cold Silver books, I think, are going to be my fuel, you know, like something that I can switch over to, and I can just be in Hunter's Head and like, you know, have fun and watch all my old favorite Westerns. And
my nickname since high school has been Hoss.
Nice.
Yeah. So if you know any, and I'm sure you do, he's a very big guy in, what was it he's in? I can't remember the name of the show. But he's a big old dude, and I'm a big old dude. So in high school, I had a lot more weight on me in high school. And that and Shrek.
Bonanza. Yep, there it is.
Bonanza, yes.
Bonanza, yep.
It's a very good show. I love going back in time in that way, because they are nothing like the shows that are on, you know, modern TV today. It's just done differently.
I love one of my favorite films of all time is Young Guns. It's a 1980s film. I just watched it today because I was like, I can't
think of it. Gene, the actor from Willy Wonka, right?
No, Emilio Estevez is the main. He plays Billy the Kid, and then there's like Kiefer Sutherland's in it, Lou Diamond Phillips.
I'm thinking of a different. I don't know.
Casey Shamasco.
I have to check that out.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
It was a Western that the guy who played the original Willy Wonka was in.
Gene Wilder.
Gene Wilder, that's his name. I don't remember the name of the book or not the book. I think there was a book of it first, or the show, but very influential. I know that.
Oh yeah.
So I need to watch some more older Western. You know,
well, if you haven't seen Young Guns,
I haven't.
You should.
Ooh, Blazing Saddles. Yep, that's it. Got it.
I got some side eyes on Twitter the other day because I admitted that Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is not one of my favorite films. I'm not a big fan.
I saw that tweet. What was your number one? I don't remember.
Young Guns is
okay.
Yeah, I had what did I have on there? Young Guns, 3:10 to Yuma with
was Tombstone on there?
Christian Bale. Nope, haven't seen that one.
Oh, you have to watch Tombstones.
I feel like I've maybe seen a long time ago. I may have seen part of it. I don't think I've seen the whole thing.
Oh, it's absolutely just a banger.
Yeah, I will definitely watch it. Russell Crowe, Christian Bale's 3:10 to Yuma, I really loved.
Yes.
The Outlaw Josie Wales. It was an older Clint Eastwood. Trying to think what else.
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is hard for me to watch today as an older.
It's so slow.
It's very slow.
Like I can handle older films. I watch a lot of older films, so it's not that. It's just like 10 minutes for someone to walk from one end of the hallway to the other. Like my ADD is so gone. I'm like, guys, I can't.
They like zoom in on his mouth with like a toothpick in
and
it
then
for
his
4
boot
minutes.
Feel, and then the doorknob, and I'm just like,
we get it. He is He's a rock star who's walking right now. Like that's taken quite some time for you to tell me. And I got it within the first 10 seconds. Yeah. But it's also one of those things that like, that's a reason we kind of want to go back and watch The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, because it's just so far out there. And it's just, he looks like a hero, right?
Oh yeah.
His, oh my goodness, it's a modern movie with Clint Eastwood was so good.
Oh man, he's been in a few.
Yeah, there's like a muscle car, and he's like kind of racist.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but I know which one you're talking about.
But you know, he's this guy that was kind of like in Vietnam, and I used to stack spooks like you. You know, you're very kind of a racist guy, and at the end, he's like giving his life for Gran Torino.
Yep,
such a good movie. He ends up giving his life for one of the Vietnamese kids, and it's a really good telling as far as how us as humans it can kind of like full circle come around, and that humans are humans regardless of where we're born, what we look like, what our everyday is. In fact, one of the coolest things that I have learned that I knew I would like, but I hadn't experienced yet, was the difference in cultures, whether that's me here and somebody in California or New Zealand, or I've talked to a couple people in India, just the differences in our day-to-day normals.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Like I could talk about that stuff all day, the things that you do every day that I never think about.
Yep. I love fantasy for that, because we can, and I think that's part of the, I've always been really intrigued and fascinated by culture in general, and my whole life, even when I was a kid. And I love, like, I want to absorb as much as I can from as many different places as I can, and learn as much as I can about as many places in the world as I can, because me
and my wife want to go to Japan.
Oh yeah, that one's high.
Talk about a beautiful country.
So much history. Yeah. Yep.
Humble people who have absolutely suffered in the past, and the way that they do things, the way they look at life. And that's not just, Japanese culture. That's so many other cultures that I've learned about, and so many that I haven't yet, and I'm excited to learn more about, because we're all human, guys. We all bleed red, and instead of finding those things that in the past in history people have used to segregate themselves or to look at somebody in a negative way or cast that negative shadow, I very much do the opposite. Those things that I find different, as long as they're nothing crazy or like against my morals, which would be very bad things, like but most of the things, it's like, instead of separating myself from something I may not understand, that draws me to want to know more about it. Yeah, I think we need more of that.
100%. Yeah.
So I think that's incredible, and I love that you do that too.
Well, it's almost weird now. I'm at a point where when I do watch something that's in English, it's almost like I have to bring my brain back, because I'm like looking for the subtitles. I'm so not used to that anymore. Watching a bunch of, American Westerns this week, I was like, man, this is really weird. I'm not used to everybody speaking English.
Yeah. I have to be honest with you. When it comes to film or, movies, shows, I am not huge on reading subtitles and then like strictly subtitles. Now it's something that you have to kind of get used to. Now there has been a couple movies where I'm very interested in how the plot's going and our character, and I'm like, all right, I'll read the subtitles. But most of the time, and modern movies have done this where they'll have a voiceover in English. So that helps guys like me who want to kind of go with the story and learn more about that society or culture, but don't really want to stare and not look at the TV, rather than just watch the words that are coming up. Now, when it comes to music, that's very different for me, because I'm like you can hear that voice, that tone, that emotion. And that's what I'm after in music every day. Yeah. So are you reading anything currently?
I am actually currently reading Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb, and I'm also reading Daughter of the Beast by E.C. Greaves.
My man.
Yep, I've got 2 Spiffbo finalists left after that.
So. Oh, really? Have you read Petition by Delilah Wan?
That was a semifinalist.
Yeah.
I haven't, but I want to.
Okay, I'm getting ready to read that after I'm done with a couple of books.
I've heard really, and Delilah's an amazingly organized and intelligent person. Like, she knows more about the inner workings of like Amazon and indie publishing. It's really impressive. And I've heard a lot of really good things about Petition, so I'm excited to read it.
So that's awesome. I'm so happy. I have a new suggestion for me to read in the future now. I'll speak on what I'm reading because I'm really excited about it. Normally, I wouldn't even really talk about what I'm reading, but I'm just so excited about it. I'm going to have to say something. I bought, and originally I bought it, and I hadn't read the blurb like I was talking about earlier. I knew the author. I knew what the book looked like as a hardback and just how beautiful it was. I knew I wanted to buy it. And that was Dragon Mage by M.L. Spencer. Have you read it?
Yes, I have.
Holy crow.
Yep.
I am just absolutely loving it.
Yeah.
It's just so fun. And she's such a good writer.
She is. Yeah, she's very good. Speaking of MLs, have you read Sword of Kaigen yet?
I haven't read it yet, but it peeks at me every single day. And then I'm like, man, I really wanted that special edition, but I wasn't in the game that early. But no, this and Robin Hobb are the two that speak to me every day.
Yep.
Suggest you loved this?
I really liked it. I had a couple of minor criticisms with it that I went over in my review, but overall, I mean, she really was like, okay, how many incredibly deep themes can I explore in a single novel and get away with it and do it in a way that just is incredibly impactful?
Oh, wow.
And the answer was yes.
Oh, wow.
Incredible mother-son relationship in that one. Really interesting portrayal of, in my opinion, dissociation.
Oh, wow.
Generational consequences, war, and very, very good book. Very good book.
Does it throw any history in it? Like, this is why we went to war?
Yeah. There's definitely some backstory that the characters find out. And it's definitely more straight inspiration from, like, it's basically Japan. Like, they're speaking Japanese words and they, but it's definitely its own world, but it is very, very heavily based on Japan.
One of the books that I've seen, as far as like people who talk only about like traditionally published authors, which I don't necessarily watch a lot of, but there are some. I've caught this book in the ether and it kind of just spoke to me, so I bought it. I haven't read it yet. In fact, it came in the mail today, and it's called "This Is How You Lose the Time War." Now, looking at this cover, you wouldn't think sci-fi, right?
No. I know it's in the sci-fi section.
Well, I haven't seen this yet, but the blurb on the back is from V.E. Schwab, and I'll quote, this is exactly verbatim. Holy shit, this was good. Come on. That is exactly what I would expect.
Yeah.
How much was she paid for that? Extremely vague that you didn't even have to read it kind of blurb.
Yeah.
But no, I've heard some really cool stuff about this book, and I can't wait to talk to some people who have read it. Ken Liu did give a blurb too. Seditious and seductive.
I mean, that's better than
the last one was kind of just like, what should I say? Somebody just blurt out a sentence.
It's funny how many blurbs are like that on fantasy books, where I just kind of, okay, guys, like, wow, the effort.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you one who does blurbs really well. It's Adrian Tchaikovsky. I kind of go back to talking about T.R. Napper, who I talked with last night. He has a opening to Neon Leviathan that I'm sure started out as Adrian's blurb that just spanned over 2 or 3 pages. So they put that as kind of like the opening to the book.
The foreword,
the foreword, exactly.
Nice.
And it's really good, and it's honest. It's too deep to be not like honest and genuine.
You know, as you were talking about trad and pub books, I don't know if you've read it yet, but the book that I think hands down I would recommend to you from a trad pub author that I think you would absolutely love is Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Ames.
Oh, I was thinking about that book today.
Hands down. I think you would love it. It's a motley crew of older veteran warriors based off of like 80s rock bands.
Oh, I can't believe I haven't picked it up yet, because I'll tell you.
And it's a standalone.
I thought there was a book too.
There is, but it's its own, like the book 2 is its own. So it like the book 2 has a character that you kind of meet in book 1.
Okay.
But book 1 is its own close story.
That makes it even more attractive to me because, you know, to get those trilogies where you have to know every single character, they're fun. They can be if they're, you know, for you, but they can also be very taxing if you're not 100%. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's funny. I was thinking about Kings of the Wild today. I was thinking back on some videos I watched of Mike's book reviews, and that was one that really popped out at me. So I can't believe I haven't picked that up, but now I have to pick it up. And it's been on my CBR for a while, and really excited because I
think you would love it.
Dig a lot of the aspects that went into that book. Awesome. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
Any future interviews that you would recommend with anybody? I know that I talk to a lot of people, and even if they're people who I've already spoke with, like chances are I was already going to speak with them anyway. So anybody that does anything in this world that you look up to or respect or want to learn more from.
Oh man, I have a huge list. Have you had Andrew on yet? Andrew Meredith?
Once.
Okay.
It was a spur of the moment thing.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't planned. And I got a hold of him. I was like, hey, somebody canceled today. You want to chat? And he did. Yep. So I would love to have him back on for a more constructed chat.
He's so much fun to talk to. And he's just, I mean, if you need writing encouragement or ideas or advice, like he's brilliant at that. Let me look at my shelves here quick. Another one, have you talked to Andy Peliquin yet?
Once. Okay. It was at the beginning of my channel. That's the
problem, Matt, is that you have had so many interviews that I'm like trying to scramble for who you haven't talked to yet.
No. Everybody does that. And the thing is I had people on before I read any other work.
Right.
And so there was already that planned second and third interview.
Right.
That I'll get so much from. So that doesn't matter.
Have you interviewed Crystal Matar yet?
I had her on. Yep.
Okay. Looking at all T.A. Bruno.
I've had him on. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'll tell you what though, he's sending
K.E. Andrews.
I've had her on.
I've had her on. Okay. I'm running out of people.
No. So those type of answers, like I said, are beautiful. So I know I've had so many people on within our community. It's hard to come up. I wanted to tell you. I didn't notice this until like right before we started talking. Last night's interview was my 200th video. So you're number 201. You're getting me to that 300. You're 201. That's amazing spot.
Nice.
So considering that I've talked with so many people, so I'll tell you, tomorrow night, I'm going to be speaking with the dynamic duo, Two to Ramble. Man, I love their channel. They are going to be on here, and we're going to crack up, and we're going to come up with some shenanigans. I just see it.
Yep.
In fact, my thumbnail is full of shenanigans. I have these thought bubbles coming from Richard, the bald one. Sorry, bro. Me too. So you can't even hate on me. It's like a thought bubble, and he talks about Wheel of Time a lot. He really loves that. So I put the thought bubble, Wheel of Time, and then Austin's is a logo of my channel. I'm hoping he gets a kick out of that.
That would be awesome. I did think of one. Have you talked to Christopher Warman and Elon Marche?
No.
Oh my gosh, have them on. They wrote Seasons of Albion, which is incredible. They are a husband and wife duo, and their creative process is fascinating. They're so cool.
Ooh.
There you go.
I
found somebody.
I have to say, our thought process, the wavelength, we're very much on a very
Sharing
similar
a brain
one.
cell.
We are. It's funny you brought up Kings of the Wild because I literally thought of that today. And then yesterday, I'm looking at my bookshelf and I'm like, I've had these books for a little while. I haven't read them yet. And I have some room at the end of the year for, some reviews and interviews. And these, I read the blurbs and I'm just so excited to read
Seasons
these.
is so good. I haven't read Contract and Sulphorn yet, but Seasons of Albadon was one of my top reads of 2023.
I'm getting a hold of them tomorrow.
They're amazing. Yep, they're awesome.
Cannot wait. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. That's always a little nugget in there I'm after. It's like, who have I probably not thought of, or in this case, thought a little about, but haven't pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
That
well, you mentioned two to ramble, and I immediately started thinking of two people, and then I was like, oh.
See?
Yep.
I love how that happens.
Yep.
So, oh my goodness, Tori, this has been such a fun time. I don't look. I definitely had an hour and 40 minutes talks, maybe 3 or 4 of them. Not many. Look.
Well, I'm honored. Thank you for having me on. I've been really looking forward to this.
Me too. It's been so much fun, and I always I get to learn so much when we talk, and I think it's just two people who love the same kind of thing, and you get to talk about your experience, and I get to talk about my experience, and it's just one of those things. It's so much fun. So I want to thank you for letting me borrow you. I know you've got a busy life, you've got a family to take care of, and I just appreciate you taking a little bit of time to come and chat about your experience on my channel.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Always, of course. This won't be the last time.
Sounds good.
Awesome. So you guys that were here, that I've probably skipped so many wonderful comments because look, my brain doesn't work that fast. I'm sorry. It's getting there.
It's a lot to keep track of.
It is. But I threw up what I saw. And if I missed anything, you guys can just send me like a hate email or something. Like, I'm cool with that. I've got pretty tough skin.
Take it up with your HR or your PR department.
Yeah, I'll forward you to like the overseas like answering machine.
Yeah.
So I didn't even read this yet. I just seen it was Ed, so I threw it up. Hey Tori, you should invite this guy Matt onto your channel. I think he goes by
trust, I will.
Awesome. And then AR Witham's a cool cat. Okay, I have him on Twitter. I have to check out what book he's written. There's so many people, guys, that
he wrote Legend of Blackjack.
Oh, really? I can picture it. Mm-hmm. All right. Awesome. I have to check out. I don't know if I have that one or not. I feel like I do, though. There's so many that get thrown at me that I want to make time for. It's like when you first start reviewing books, like there's a time period where you realize that as nice and genuine and giving as you want to be in this community, you have to go at your pace. Yep. And sometimes that means, hey, I can't accept any more views right now.
Right. Or it's going to be, I always tell people I can't give you a timeline. I absolutely can't. Yeah.
And honestly, most authors
are okay with that.
Recognize that before even asking you. But yeah, that's a very real part. But thank you guys for being here live because you guys really make it such a fun experience. And it's very heartwarming to see all of you here before, during, and then the comments after. So thank you again. Those of you that will watch this in the future, you guys are as equally as special. Thank you so much. And tomorrow, like I said, I'll be talking with Richard and Austin from Two to Ramble. Yes, I'm sure you know that channel. They're pulling all of the subscribers all over their channel because they're just blowing up. They've got a wonderful channel. They have good chemistry. That's what it is.
Yep.
So I believe 8 o'clock. I'll post it on the Twitter and all that fun stuff. I'm kind of old school. I say the Twitter. So I'll put that on Twitter after this, and we'll see you then. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Tori.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.